Oh, that's it. Now we got to be serious.
All right, then think a few minutes in, we got 61 people
Right
logged
on.
on so far. I think we'll start now.
You want to start now? You want to? What do you think, y'all? You give people a little bit of grace and 1 more minute. Why don't we break the ice? How's everybody doing? If you hear me, type a dot and send it to the chat. You can at least do that. Boom. Okay, so the sound's working. You see my screen. I feel like I'd get really interesting answers if I ask why you came to this one. Eating canes. Ooh, yum. I've been perfecting the art of cooking chicken on my smoker in the backyard, and I can make some really good chicken on that smoker now. Oh my gosh. I'm here because Dr. Farrar's here. Oh, you're too nice. That's why I'm here. Is that a tautology? One of those circular logic things?
Self-improvement.
Self-improvement. Cool. Cool. God bless you. Good
I'm
luck.
a better person every time I come to your stuff. I figured I should just make it a point.
It's wild. That's wild. Thanks. Makes you feel any better. I think I'm probably becoming a better person every time I give one of these because I got to come up with the material to talk about, right?
The whole like mastering the material by teaching it.
There you go. I tell people all the time that the reason I got into teaching was because I wanted to figure this stuff out. And not for nothing, but this will be the talk that really proves it. I'm going to show you my college grades in all the classes that I teach. They weren't A's. About to transition from an internship to a job upon graduating, feeling like I don't deserve it. Oof. Thanks for being so open there, man. Riz, I really appreciate that. And by the way, something that I've felt with. Perfectionism, definitely a big challenge as well, Raquel says. Yeah, I've been a perfectionist my entire life, it turns out. I didn't realize it until I realized it. But the problem is that perfectionism holds me back more than gives me success. And I always think that doing an excellent job is the thing that's going to make this all go. And it seems like it's actually the opposite. And then you feel things like what other folks are sharing here, Cameron and Jessica both, about feeling stressed or feeling incapable because we're so overloaded. But what's really happening is we're doing 3 times as much work as we need to. And that's something I want to talk about. Graduate in May, starting to feel the daily job rejections. Damn. Hang in there, Joshua. This is a crazy time. Let's see. Serena is transferring to a PhD program. Rad. All right. So getting into one, feeling like an imposter, totally get that. By the way, there's definitely 2 flavors of folks in grad school. Those who are just crazy smart and get it the first time, and then the people like this guy who just are willing to work really hard. That's how I made it through grad school. My classmates did half as much homework as me and got twice the grades. When you graduate with your PhD, which you will do at some point in the near future, Serena, then you get a new one, which is you start waking up from night sweats and a nightmare where they've called to tell you they found an error in your dissertation and they'll have to rescind your degree. I've had that nightmare so many times I can't even count them. Now we're flowing. Hey, thanks, y'all. I really appreciate you. Let's see, we got Carolina here, stepping up into professionalism, things like that, feeling a little underserving. Awesome, right? Trying to find those first opportunities, getting asked to join hard projects, but not feeling capable in there. Okay. Grades as a measurement of our ability, definitely not very effective. No, I don't, Nick. I don't think they can actually come and take your dissertation back. If they can, there's got to be a statute of limitations. I've been out since 2015, so if they call me back now, we'd be in big trouble. My graduate advisor has actually passed away now. Rest in peace. But yeah, if I had to go back to the Turbo Lab right now, I'd probably just not. In the PhD program, don't know as much as I should. Yeah, go ahead. What's up?
I actually, the main reason why I came here is because, as you can see from the messages, a lot of us do feel like we're imposters. And I feel like more professors should talk about how they also have felt that way, because then they'll make us feel like, okay, we're not alone. We're not in the. So as soon as I saw that this would be the talk you were going to give, I was like, I have to go. I
Oh,
have to
wow,
go
that's so
because
cool.
I feel like if he's going through this and he did it, then I can do it too. So thank you.
Right on. Oh, thank you so much for that. And honestly, that's a very like kind of warm way for me to leap off, I think, because if I'm honest with you, of all the presentations I've given, this is one that I'm more nervous than usual about. All right, it comes from a couple places. One, I haven't done this one before, so it's fresh, right? This is a draft. It's the best I can claim. This is a draft. You're the guinea pigs. This is the first time I've ever tried doing this one. And so I already know that it's not as good as I want it to be. I already know that it's not as good as I'm capable of delivering. But as the title should suggest, I do believe that it's good enough for today. And thanks to y'all, it's going to be better tomorrow, right? That's the best I can claim about anything I do. So if you haven't met me before, even if you have, it's important to me that I introduce myself a certain way. And so here I go. I am Tony Farrar. I'm from the College of Engineering here at UNLV. Student success is my specialty, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be talking to you today about how to live your best life. If you haven't had a chance yet or haven't heard the invitation, if you're willing and able, I believe that community is more important than anything I'm going to say. We haven't seen each other in a very long time. If you'd like to turn your camera on, it's appreciated and invited. If you don't want to, there's no shame whatsoever, but just wanted to let you know. The people that have their cameras on, to me, are making an extremely loud statement, and hope you know it's much appreciated. Ooh, so I'd like to start off today by telling you a bold-faced lie. Are you ready for it? Bold-faced lie. And that is that the mistakes that you've made, the shortcomings that you've made in your past are related to your worth. They determine your worth. The more mistakes you've made, the more shortcomings you've had, the lower your value. Absolute lie. Not true whatsoever. I would like to tell you a second lie. And that second lie is that the successes and victories that you've had in the past have anything to do with your worth. Also a lie. They have nothing to do with the value that you bring to the universe. The truth is that you are intrinsically valuable. Intrinsic is a word that I had to look up to make sure I was using it properly. Intrinsic value is this concept of having something naturally. You are naturally valuable. That's unfair to have been raised the way we are because we're brought up in a measurement-oriented culture. We constantly are asked to prove that we belong, right? Once a year, I thought this was going to end when I graduated, right? Once a year, I have to fill out my annual evaluation, and you will too at whatever job you go to. And it's basically more information than was required for me to apply to the job in the first place. And I don't know exactly what would happen if I didn't fill it out. But at the time that you're doing it, it feels an awful lot like you're reapplying for your job, right? And so there's this constant reminder that people are measuring us, people are watching us, and if you can't figure out how to write down what you've done in your life and have that point to the value that you offer us, then you don't belong anymore, right? What a wild thought, right? Instead, what I want you to realize, if you get nothing else from the talk, you can leave now, I guess. I hope you don't, but I believe that people are intrinsically valuable. I believe that everybody's story is important, and that's never been more true, or more obvious, I should say. It's always been the same level of trueness, but it's never been more obvious to me than in the last year, as so many people whose stories have been shushed for way too long are finally getting told, and we're starting to figure out what it looks like to be a better society. Holy crap, right? Why? Because people are intrinsically valuable. And when we start playing these games where it's like you ever have one of these days where you're like competing with each other to see whose life is the shittiest, excuse my language, but you know what I mean? Like where it's like, oh, I've got 6 things to do. Oh, yeah, well, I've got 7 and my car broke down. It's like, holy smokes, folks, right? Let's do something different. Imagine this for a moment. It's a miracle that you're alive. I'm sure you've seen plenty of times now, like the various stats on how unlikely life is. I was trying to prep for this talk, and I realized that there's a lot of argument here. One estimate says that the odds of you existing right now are 1 in 10 to the 2 millionth power. That's not 1 out of 2 million possibility. That's 1 divided by 10 with 2 million zeros after it possibility. Because of all of the generational odds that every one of these, this sperm and this egg and this person lived long enough to procreate and bumped into this person all the way preternatural human or whatever it is. It's an absolute miracle. And all the stats about how if Earth were an eighth of an inch this way or that way, the temperatures would never work and the sun would explode and blah, 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 and nothing could exist. Like, Google some of this sometime. It's pretty crazy. Like, we should not be here, and yet here we are. And not only that, yeah, we are here living in this time, which means we are the ones selected by fate or the higher power, whatever you believe in, to solve the problems that are happening now and to live through them and to do the things that we're doing. Other people were born during the bubonic plague, and other people before that were born, and the best they could ever hope for was maybe finding a cave. Right? And here we are watching each other on fancy laptops that we complain about when they're not fast enough. Like, it's a freaking miracle that we're here, and I'm stoked for it. Average life expectancy in the US right now, 28,397 days. Today's 13,334 for me. So you can figure out how old I am if you're good at math, but otherwise, think about the astonishing gift there. We get so many days, right? But at the same time, that doesn't look like a very huge number. And so part of what motivates me is just the recognition that part of what makes me so precious is that I'm finite, right? I only get to do so much. And so I better be choosy, but I definitely better be positive, right? It's a rare time to be alive, and yet you are, right? And I think about things like gold. I think about things like diamonds. Gold we've found actual uses for, so it's a little bit harder now. But like diamonds aren't really valuable because of what we do with them. There's a few scientists out there that stick them in lasers. Okay, fine. But the rest of us, the reason that we're willing to pay so much for a diamond isn't because it does anything for us whatsoever. It's just valuable because it's rare and it's finite. There's only so many of them, right? And I've got one, right? Same story for you. So I hope that we can find ways to like embrace a little bit of positivity here, because every day can count, right? That doesn't mean you have to feel the pressure that it should. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't do something amazing today. My life's total garbage, right? But on the other hand, it's easy to complain, right? Not that long ago we were saying it was too cold, and now already I hear people saying it's too hot. No, it was jacket weather, and now it's lake weather, right? Oh, it's too windy out. No, it's time to go fly a kite, right? Like, what can we do to find a little bit more fun in what we're doing? Find a little bit of an opportunity to celebrate today rather than just endure it, right? So here's my outline for today's talk. I usually use the same outline every time I talk. I don't know if you've caught on. If you've been to more than one of these this semester, this slide might look familiar. First, I want to tell you a little bit about why I think you should listen to me specifically about this. I want to share 3 core values that have informed me that are more like philosophies than to-do lists. And then during the what now part, I've got some ideas, and I hope that we can open it up to a bit of a brainstorm on some practical things that we can all kind of do to strengthen our own lives and share with each other and kind of and step ahead here. So I'd like to start with perfectionism and imposter syndrome all in one. If you look at the date of the scan up here in the top left corner, this is just about 10 years ago plus a couple months, because this was January 12th, 2011. This was the first homework assignment for the PhD level thermodynamics class that I was taking for the 3rd time. I took it the first semester of grad school in 2008, where I could not get the first homework assignment done, and so I dropped the class. Couldn't even do the first homework assignment, which, by the way, is a review of undergrad thermo. It's not any new content, and I couldn't do it. I'm in this room with like, a dozen PhD students, and they're all pontificating about their brains, and I could not keep up. So I dropped it. I came back a year later, tried again, made it through a little bit farther, still couldn't finish the first homework assignment, dropped again, gave up for several years. And so now it's 2011, so 3 years later, I finally made it through the class. Okay, this is the first homework assignment. There were 12 problems on it, and I turned in a 40-page homework set. I pulled 2 all-nighters to do this. I couldn't get a staple through it, so I handed it in a binder. And I was so friggin' proud of myself, right? It's different people, but the same idea. I'm in this room for all these people who I think are so much smarter than me, so much better than me. Every one of them has, 6 pieces of paper with a staple through it, and they're handing it in, and I've got my binder, and I'm like, yes, feel the weight of my amazingness. And what I did is I derived every equation, I wrote down explanations. This is engineering analysis homework, and yet most of what you can see if you squint close enough is words, not equations, right? I was quite proud of this. So no TA, this was graded by the prof, by hand. And this is all he wrote on the entire thing. Complete 100. And everybody that had 6 pieces of paper or 4 pieces of paper or even 2 pieces of paper also got complete 100. When I was in undergrad, I took the following classes. Took Intro to Engineering, which I now teach. I got a B. This is a class that, like, who gets a B in Intro to Engineering? Well, this one right here, me. I took Calculus 1, 2, and 3 with an average grade of a B. I got an A in Calc 1 after the 3rd time of taking it. I got a C in Calc 2 and an actual B in Calc 3, so that averaged out to a B. I got a C in Statics. I teach that every semester that I've been here as a professional. And I got a B in Fluids, which I teach. That's actually the class that I've taught more than any other. What you don't see there is down below. That's a screenshot from my actual transcript where I got a W the first time I took dynamics, because walking into the final exam, I had a 30 in the class. And if I was going to pass, I had to get, like, 1,012% on the final. That put me on the 5-year plan basically instantly. I had to take a semester off just to retake dynamics. And from there, I ended up paying extra tuition, extra student loans, like all kinds of interesting things. But it turns out it worked out well for me, because I wouldn't have been in college when I met my wife either. So, things line up, right? Honestly, the 14 grand that I had to spend on tuition, worth it if I got to meet her. Fast forward to grad school, and these are some of the rooms that I found myself in that I didn't feel like I belonged. Okay. First, I did an internship with Goodyear. And there was a point in time in there where I made a discovery and a design error in one of the products that they were manufacturing at the time. And the next thing you know, I was called into the chief technical officer's office along with my boss and the chief legal counsel. And I don't know if that means much to you, but companies like Goodyear are run by what's called a board of directors. Everybody knows what a CEO is. The CEO, the chief executive officer, is the one that wrangles all of the other chief officers. So the chief technical officer is one of, like, the top 6 people in this company, multi-billion, multinational company. And here I am, an intern, being called in to show this person my work. First semester of grad school, I was being funded by NASA. I had to go into a NASA conference and give a presentation to presidential appointees, literally people who were appointed to their post by President Obama, and tell them why they should keep paying for the research I was doing. And by the way, if they said no, I would lose the funding that was also paying my income and my tuition. That went on several times. I used to have to travel to United Technologies is a company. They own Pratt & Whitney, which is the largest aircraft engine manufacturer in the planet. I used to have to go to their international headquarters on a regular basis and walk into a room full of people who make jet engines for a living and tell them how jet engines work. And convince them to continue sending me money. As I graduated, with all these degrees in jet engines and mechanical engineering, the most logical choice would be to go cure cancer. So that's what I did. To University of Florida and got a job in their nuclear engineering program, doing radiation therapy and spent fuel storage. We don't call it nuclear waste; we call it spent fuel. If that's interesting to you, by the way, we teach that here. We're one of very few schools in the country. You should go to grad school. You should do it here, and you should get a degree in nuke, because there's an expertise gap right now. Folks are retiring faster than they're graduating, so there's lots of opportunity. Sorry, side note. Never once could I figure out. I'd never seen modern physics. Like, does anybody know de Broglie's wave equation or Schrodinger's box, other than as the joke from, like, Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory? Because that's all I knew about it, and now I have to do this for a job. Right? I had to go to the American Nuclear Society's annual conference, and more than once, somebody who has more experience than my dad in his job in terms of their age would look at me and say, okay, well, what should we do about it? And every single one of these times, all I could think is, I don't freaking know. Shortly after that, while I was doing that postdoc, I got invited to attend a seminar at NC State, North Carolina State University, called Building the Future Faculty. And it's basically like a 3-day conference to get folks ready to become professors. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What I didn't realize was it's put on by the Office of Institutional Equity and Diversity. And the entire mission of this program is to help underrepresented individuals achieve success in faculty positions. I don't know if you've seen me, but if you look at your cameras, well, not your cameras, your screens closely, you'll notice that I look like the bad guy. In fact, I've had quite a lot of privilege. And here I am in a room learning how it is that white dudes like myself have been screwing people over for way too long. And, you know, we all say the same thing. I've never intentionally treated somebody with bias, but I'm sure that I have treated them unintentionally many times. And I'm continuing to learn that. But what's wild is I felt like a fish out of water trying to even have a conversation in that room. And since then, I've been on many a diversity council, including having now been invited back to NC State twice for that same conference as a host, not as a participant, where they ask me to weigh in on what we can do to enhance diversity efforts. And every single time I have to walk in there looking and having the story that I do and try to find a way to talk about these things that you know, are evolving faster than I can even figure it out, if I'm honest. And so time in and time out, I find myself thrust into these situations where I am not feeling qualified. And essentially every single time I have the same mindset, which is I'm not perfect. I'm in the constant process of trying to become my best self, but I do know that I'm valuable. I'm intrinsically valuable, and so I belong here. So that's why I think you should listen to me today. If nothing else, I found myself in the uncomfortable position of not feeling like I belonged, of trying to use perfectionism as a way to prove that I did many, many, many times. So 3 core values. These will be kind of rapid fire, but not quite. So we'll see how this goes. And then we'll move on to the chit chat. And I'm stoked for all of it. So doing okay. We okay so far? Everybody still awake? We're here. Number of participants hasn't dropped, so that's cool. Much love. Thanks, everybody. All right, here we go. Core value number 1, the industrial education model wants you to blend in. It wants you to turn your camera off, and it wants you to hide every way possible. I'd like to read you a little passage from a book. It's a free book. You can Google it and get it for free right now. It's a PDF by a guy named Seth Godin called Stop Stealing Dreams, and it's his opinion on how we might fix school. And it's quite wonderful. But here's a little passage from it that I wanted to read you because he just says it better than I can. 150 years ago, adults were incensed, that means really angry, about child labor. Not because they were concerned for the kids, but because low-wage kids were taking jobs away from hardworking adults. So yeah, there was some moral outrage about 7-year-olds losing fingers and being abused at work, but the economic rationale was paramount. Factory owners insisted that losing child workers would be catastrophic to their industries, and they fought hard to keep the kids at work because they said they couldn't afford to hire adults. It wasn't actually until 1918 that nationwide compulsory education was in place in America. 1918. We're barely 100 years into this experiment. Part of the rationale used to sell this major transformation to industrialists was the idea that educated kids would actually become more compliant and productive workers. Our current system of teaching kids to sit in straight rows and obey instructions isn't a coincidence. It was an investment in our economic future. The plan: trade short-term child labor wages for longer-term productivities by giving kids a head start in learning to do what they're told. Large-scale education was not developed to motivate kids or to create scholars. It was invented to churn out adults who worked well within a system. Scale was more important than quality, just as it was for most industrialists. And it worked. Several generations of productive, fully employed workers followed. But now Nobel Prize winning economist Michael Spence makes it very clear there are tradable jobs doing things that could be done somewhere else, like building cars, designing chairs, answering the phone. And there are non-tradable jobs, things like mowing the lawn or cooking burgers, right? I can't send that to another country and still get a hamburger. Is there any question that the first type of job, things like designing cars and buildings, is worth keeping in our economy? Sadly, between the years 1990 and 2008, the US economy added only 600,000 tradable jobs. In other words, if you live and work in a job where someone tells you exactly what to do, they can always find somebody cheaper than you to do it, and they will. And yet here our schools continue to churn out kids who are stuck looking for jobs where the boss tells them exactly what to do. Can you see the disconnect here? Every year we churn out millions of workers who are trained to do 1925 style labor. Sorry, I've decided this passage is too long and I'm trying to get to one other part. Here you go. Here's the rub of my argument. The only good reason to teach trig and calculus in high school is to encourage kids to become engineers and scientists. That's it. The way we actually teach it decreases the number of kids who choose to become engineers and scientists. It's a screen. It's the hard course that the schools set up to weed out the less intent. In other words, we're using the very tool that creates engineers to dissuade them from learning the material that would help them become engineers. The factory of model of education has us convinced of many, many things that just aren't true. Did you know that the IQ, this is me again, I'm done with my quote. Did you know that the IQ test was actually originally invented to measure the impact of school, to measure the impact of education? The person who designed the test said that IQ is not a fixed number, and it may be the thing that indicates whether or not people learned anything in school. Meanwhile, I think we've all had the experience of taking an SAT or a GRE or the LSAT or the MCAT. Have you noticed that there's a billion-dollar industry around preparing for these exams? Have you noticed that you too can spend $85 on a practice book full of questions, and that those practice books are full of strategies that teach you how to game the system? I'll give you an example. I'm helping one of my cousins is studying for the MCAT right now to become a medical doctor. Okay, she wants to be a surgeon in the ER, and they've got so many different varieties of questions in there, but they ask about fluids, pressures and flow rates and these kinds of things. And she's like, I don't know anything about this. And I showed her how just using the units in the answers, kilograms per second, meters per second, things like that, she can get the right answer every single time on that exam with absolutely no clue what the fluids are doing. What is that measuring? I don't know. I think perfectionism is a symptom. If you live in a world that constantly wants to see you perform to spec, if you constantly live in a world that expects you to perform to spec, do it the way we said, come up with the answer we told you to come up with, then of course we find ourselves constantly worried that what we're doing is not good enough. And so we come up with our own standards for it. And the next thing you know, we're turning in 42 pages of homework on a 6-problem assignment, right? Why is there an industry on how to cheat a test? Yeah, because people will pay for it. That's the free market. I paid a consultant to teach me how to apply to college. Hundreds of dollars. Help me get into Virginia Tech, right? I could probably make a killing doing that. Here I am. Have you noticed that everything in our lives requires an application? Name something that you applied to in the last 3 weeks. I bet you can think of something. An internship, a apartment. Let me live here. That's an
I
application.
just applied for a house 5 minutes ago.
There you go, right? Advanced standing, applying to come into this. Do they call this an application, really? Housing, right? Let me have a home. Applying to a special dorm or a honor society or a Greek fraternity or sorority or one of those types of things, right? Everything we do is about, the BSMS program. Yep, and congrats. I know a couple people here got admitted recently. Good for you.
Oh, life is
PhD
beautiful tickets.
comprehensive. Yeah, right. PhD comprehensive exam, right? That's the one where you prove that you deserve to stay in PhD school. Holy smokes, right? It's like, wait a minute, I already have the transcript, I already did the GRE, I already passed all the classes, I'm halfway through my dissertation, and now I got to take an exam to prove that I can stay, right? Oh yeah, and I already have my master's, thank you very much. Yeah, been there. The point here is we're constantly applying. Apply. Everything is take what you've done, put it in a package, hand it to somebody who barely knows your life, and ask them to judge you and decide your future. So, core value number 2, our typical response is to try and be perfect, and the problem is that perfection is artificial. Find me a perfect anything. I dare you. Have you ever seen a perfectly symmetric tree? Have you ever seen a perfectly, oh, much love to your dog, Fabi, but you know, we both know your dog's not perfect and one leg is longer than the other 3. Nature doesn't make things perfect, and yet we think because we're smart, we should. And I don't think we should anymore. So I've got a story for you. This one is also not mine, but it's a lovely passage from a book called Expecting Adam by Martha Beck. Okay, so she's a grad student in Harvard. Let me read this for you. At Harvard, of course, I learned to pay attention to very different things. The importance of prestige is so overwhelming in that culture that people hardly look at each other, let alone their environment. The attention goes to appearances, appearing successful, appearing smart. I began to notice this when I was pregnant. It was mid-November, and the few remaining leaves rattled on the trees. I welcomed the winter chill since the icy air helped keep my mind off the nausea of pregnancy. I breathed carefully one day as I waddled over to William James Hall, known to the intelligentsia as Billy Jim, to attend a class. I arrived a few minutes early and decided to use the extra time to visit a friend in the psychology department, one floor above the sociology department where my class was held. My friend was in her lab conducting an experiment that consisted of implanting wires into the brains of live rats and then making them swim in a tub of reconstituted dried milk. She told me why she was doing this, but I have no memory of what she said. Maybe she was making soup. Whatever the reason, she had put the rats in the milk in a children's wading pool, like the kind you fill up with a hose so that toddlers can splash around on a hot summer day. The tub was decorated with pictures of Smurfs. For those of you who don't know, Smurfs are the little blue people whose antics you may have observed on Saturday morning cartoons. After chatting with my rat molesting friend for a moment, I excused myself and headed downstairs for the seminar. There were 7 or 8 other graduate students in attendance, along with a couple extra professors who had come to hear the latest twist on established theories. I felt the way I always did when I walked into a classroom at Harvard, that I had just entered a den of lions. Maybe not starving lions, but lions who were feeling a little peckish at least. People in the room were fearsomely brilliant, and I was terrified that I would just say one completely idiotic thing, make one breathtakingly asinine comment that would expose me as a boorish, politically incorrect halfwit. Ah, Martha, the course instructor said. We've been waiting for you. I blushed. I'd been hoping that the class would start a little late. I didn't want to be the focus of attention. I'm sorry, I said. I was upstairs in the psych lab watching rats swim around in a Smurf pool. I see, said the instructor. Yes, I believe I've read about that. A professor, one of the visiting dignitaries, chimed in. And how is Smurf's work going? He inquired. I understand he's had some remarkable findings. Yes, says a grad student. I read his last article. There was a general murmur of agreement. It seemed everyone in the room was familiar with Dr. Smurf and his groundbreaking work with swimming rats. It took me a few discombobulated seconds to figure out that everyone at the seminar had assumed a Smurf pool was named for some famous psychological theorist. Comprehension blossomed in my brain like a lovely flower. I think, I said solemnly, that Smurf is going to change the whole direction of linguistic epistemology. They all agreed, nodding, saying things like, oh yes, and I wouldn't doubt it. I beamed at them, struggling desperately not to laugh. It wasn't so much that I wanted to mock these people. I was giddy with exhilaration because after 7 years at Harvard, I was just beginning to realize that I wasn't the only one faking it. I'd bluffed my way through many a cocktail party, pretending to know all about whichever scholar or theory was the current topic of conversation. I'd always wondered how I survived among these staggeringly intelligent people lurking around me, and now I was beginning to understand. He's a good man, Smurf is, the instructor said solemnly. By the way, I think it's funny that he assumed Smurf was a dude, let alone. Can you imagine? These are Harvard professors, visiting dignitaries. It's fun to throw shade at the Ivies. Point here is, I think that perfection is way overrated. I think that what we really need to be embracing is uncertainty analysis. This is something that I learned in grad school. Why can't we all just embrace the fact that we don't know everything? We can't remember everything at once, right? By the way, it's been scientifically demonstrated the human brain is a terrible place to store information, right? I'm using notes to give this talk because I don't remember anything, okay? The human brain is excellent at processing information. Very, very, very different things, okay? We can figure out how to find a trend. We can see a pattern that nobody else can see, but remembering the data, that's the hard part, right? We don't do that well, right? So yeah, formula sheets on all my exams. Enjoy yourself. Here's the thing. I want to ask a question. If you're in STEM, you've probably had to deal with sig figs. If you're not, then just bear with us for half a second here. Have you had to do sig figs? Do they make you uncomfortable? Give me a dot if sig figs make you uncomfortable.
Dot.
Right? Why? I think it's deeper than being concerned that you're afraid that you're rounding incorrectly. I don't think that's the issue. Okay? One of the biggest things that I learned in grad school that I didn't learn in undergrad that I wish I had was that we don't actually know anything for sure, right? Think about fundamental physical laws for a minute. Do you know the definition of a law? It's a statement that cannot be proven, but can be disproven. You cannot prove that F equals ma. You can disprove it. In fact, Einstein did, right? He came along in the early 1900s and he proved that F does not always equal ma, even though we teach it to you as though the universe has agreed that this is how it will behave, right? And again, sorry, non-STEM folks, if you're here. The point is just that we follow these equations as though they are sacred, and the truth is they're curve fits. They're the best approach to the data that we've got, right? Why didn't Einstein come along sooner, by the way? Newton figured this stuff out in what, 1500s, 1600s? Why did it take 300 years for Einstein to come along? Yeah, he had a big brain. I think that was part of it. But you know,
I
the
think
other
people
part
were
that,
afraid. They
yeah,
were afraid to kind of find out, like, oh, maybe if this person figured it out, then
right,
there's no way I can prove them wrong.
right. And that's scary, right? There's an authority. Dr. Smurf has spoken, right? Obey. I think also that measurement tools were a big part of this, right? The sextant used to observe the position of stars was invented in the 1700s, at least a century after F equals ma was invented, okay? Electricity, light bulbs, vacuum tubes, electrical measurements like voltmeters. Those are the 1800s. That's Tesla, that's Edison, and folks like that. And so the first hint at relativity that Einstein had, the photoelectric effect, which is what he actually got his Nobel for, not relativity, he first observed in 1904 that light is both a particle and a wave. And he did that because of all the science that had given him tools, right? And finally, he said, oh my gosh, F doesn't always equal ma, right? Because why? Because we got better at measuring. How tall is the Eiffel Tower?
That depends on the time of year. It will
Nice.
shrink during the winter time
Oh, I
because
love
the
it.
metal
I love
condenses.
it. I love it, right? I have high gravity days where I think I'm shorter too. I think that you ever get a question like this in a job interview? How much does the Empire State Building weigh? Blah, blah, blah. Folks like Google
You're
love
supposed
this
to do the
crap,
density thing.
right? And yeah, you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. Now there's internet articles about how to answer these hack questions, right? My response when somebody asks me a question like that is, how accurately do you need to know? Because there's no such thing as an exact answer. How long is my desk? You can't see it. Is it longer or shorter than 500 meters?
Probably shorter.
Is it longer or shorter than 10 meters?
Depends how baller you are in your office.
I can almost touch both walls of this room.
Shorter.
Is it shorter than 10 meters? All right, so what just happened there? I just gave you the first measurement stick, my wingspan, right, which is probably less than 10 meters. The point here is that most of what we do is we try to reduce uncertainty to an acceptable level. We may need to know that my desk is 30 inches wide to find out if it can fit through a door or not, right? To get it into my house. It is. Actually, it came in a pretty small box from IKEA, and then I got to spend 3 days putting it together. But the point here is just that we're constantly trying to be exact. We don't like rounding our answers, right? The calculator spit out 14 digits. I want to write them down. Why? Because I want to be exact. I want to be precise. I deal with, sophomore students in my statics class will frequently tell me that the length of something is the square root of 4 meters. I'm sorry, that's a dumb one. Square root of 3 meters. How about that? Right? No, it's 1 point something meters, right? Show me a yardstick that has the square root of 3 marked on it, right? And there's always a more exact yardstick, right? By the way, the Eiffel Tower is 324 meters tall on its average heat day, I suppose, Emma. And the Empire State Building, how tall is that? Any guesses? You weren't listening. The first answer to my question is, how accurately do you need to know? It is shorter than a mile. I'm sure of it. This leads to a theory that I've come up with that you are not going to hear from another professor. What is the ideal grade?
Whatever gets you an A.
Jessica knows me. I believe it's even more complicated than that. I think there are 3 ideal grades: 73, 83, 93, and depending on your own preference and your own availability, by the way, right? Some of us have 3 kids and are working 2 jobs and trying to go to college, and others of us, me when I was in college, are a little bit more set up to be able to focus full time just on the one thing, right? All of these affect how much time we can give, and if time translates to how much we can perform, there might be different levels. I think that these are the 3 ideal scores, depending on your goal. If your goal is to get a C, then a 73 is the best grade you should get. 83 if you want to get a B, and a 93 if you want A's. Why? Because if I get 100 on an assignment, I don't know how much overachieving I've done. When you hit the ceiling of a measurement, you don't get data on how much extra work you did, right? And by the way, there's a bold-faced lie hiding there, which is the implication that grades give us that you can know 100% of something. What garbage. I learned something about fluids every time I teach it. I've taught it 12 times. I would have gotten 100 in my fluids class every single time I taught it.
You knew everything
But
that
I
you
mean,
asked.
I'm grading myself, so of course I'm going to give myself an A, but the point here is you need to think a little bit about what the implication of a grade is and whether or not it actually measures what you think it does, because what it actually measures is your ability to answer the questions and do the homework that was assigned to you. And by the way, those questions are the ones that are the easiest to grade, not always the most important. It's very hard to ask a design question or an open-ended question on an exam because I can't grade 74 answers to a question like, what should we do, right? I can grade 74 answers that should have spit out 4.3 kilojoules, right? I can flip through pages pretty damn quick with that one. And if it doesn't say 4.3, I'll write down why you got it wrong, maybe, right? So this brings me to core value number 3. I believe that we are all artists. And so if you got into STEM because you wanted to live in a world of right answers where the formula told you what to do, I have bad news for you, my friend. And if you're not in STEM, you have something to teach the rest of us, okay? We are all artists. Another little quote here from Seth Godin, okay? Human beings, like all other animals, have a great ability to hide from the things that they fear. So in the name of comportment and compliance and the processing of millions, school uses that instinct to an advantage. At the heart of the industrial system is power, the power of bosses over workers, the power of buyers over suppliers, the power of marketers over consumers. Given the assignment of indoctrinating thousands of kids at a time, the embattled school administrator reaches for the most effective tool possible. Given that the assigned output of the school is compliant citizens, the shortcut for achieving this output is fear. The amygdala, also known as the lizard brain, is the fear center of the brain, and it is on high alert during moments of stress. Unmute your mic right now and say something. Who's amygdala fired?
Hello.
Hi.
Wow,
Hi.
good for you. We have created a safe space. Yamalith says no, and I salute you as well. All right. Your amygdala is the thing that's
about
afraid of
300.
snake. There you go. Your amygdala is the thing that's afraid of snakes. It causes your heart to race during a scary movie. It causes you to avoid direct eye contact with somebody of authority. Shortcut to compliance isn't to reason with someone, to outline the options, to sell a solution. The shortcut is to induce fear. Activate the amygdala. Do this, or we'll laugh at you. We'll expel you. We'll tell your parents. We'll make you sit in the corner. Do this, or you get the bad grade. You'll be suspended. You'll never amount to do anything. Do this, or you're in trouble. Right? Scary teachers, once they establish things, they can just give a look, right? You ever have one of these? Everybody goes quiet. Fear is used to ensure that no one stretches too far, questions the status quo, makes a ruckus. Fear is the reinforcement. You see it in career planning, academics, interpersonal actions. The message is simple. Fit in or you won't get into a good school. If you don't get into a good school and do what they say, you won't get a good job. If you don't do what we say, it'll go on your permanent record. Imagine another tool, passion. A kid in love with dinosaurs or baseball or earth science is going to learn it on her own. She's going to push hard for even more information. And better still, she's going to master the thinking behind it. Cannot be stopped. By the way, my kid, 4 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs right now, and he comes in every day and tells me a word I've never heard. Have you heard of a Quetzalcoatlus? I'm sure that isn't what it was, but what? Right. Back to the quote. Passion can overcome fear. The fear of losing, the fear of failing, the fear of being ridiculed. The problem is individual passion is hard to scale. It's hard to fit in the industrial model. It's not reliably ignited. How do I individually ignite the passion of the 210 students who are enrolled in my courses this semester? How do I do that? Right? That's why I go to work. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have an answer yet. David Mamet, pretty cool guy, says, do not internalize the industrial model. You are not one of the myriad of interchangeable pieces, but a unique human being. And if you've got something to say, say it. And think well of yourself while you're learning how to say it better. And that's the best I can claim for this seminar at the moment. I'm thinking well of myself and I'm learning how to say what I'm trying to tell you even better. Right? You've been taught to be a replaceable cog in a giant machine. You've been taught that consuming is the shortcut to happiness. Don't care about your job. Don't care about your consumer. Fit in, get the job done, and then go home and have fun. Thank God it's Friday. Oh shit, it's Monday. Right? Who wants to live their life that way? Right? And so what I'd like to consider is that art looks different than you might think it does. The way that I like to think of art is that you build a human connection that causes somebody to change what they're doing. And that could be in the way that you make a steering wheel in a car, or it could be in a piece of art that hangs on a wall like a painting, right? You ever hear somebody say they're going to major in art, and then the number one question they get asked, what's the number one question somebody who says they're going to major in art or music? I'm going to major in music.
How are you going to get a job with that?
How are you going to get a job with that? What are you going to do with that? Everybody, whatever device you're staring at me through, consider that the engineers had nothing to do with what it looks like. They made the circuits. Does your trackpad have buttons? Mine doesn't. It used to. An artist watched what people do. And they made something, right? The shirt that I'm wearing. You think an engineer decided what shade of orange to make it? What do you mean, what are they going to do with it? They're going to make everything. Every single advertisement that you have ever encountered was made by an artist that was interpreting data given to them by a marketer. My trackpad lets me touch it with 1, 2, or 3 fingers, and I can make gestures. Why? Because an artist watched the way that I interact with my world and found that I can interact more effectively. So here's the thing. This is a bucket of paint. If I go to the hardware store right now, I could buy this bucket of white paint for a dozen bucks, maybe 20 if you get the like anti-chipping kind, right? And I'm willing to pay them for that because I don't have the time or the interest to go acquire the raw materials necessary to create that bucket of paint. And so I will pay them more than they put into the paint in exchange for the opportunity to not do that work myself. But now imagine this, if I take that bucket of paint and I use it to make my home nicer or an apartment nicer, then I get to raise rent, or I get to sell this place for more than I paid. And not just by the amount that the bucket cost me, substantially more than that. I paid 25 bucks for the bucket, I charge $100 more a month in rent. Why? Because you're willing to pay a premium to live in a house that has nice blue walls. Got you, Nick. But think about this a minute. That bucket of paint in the hands of somebody with a roller creates something on the order of $1,200 a year. Put that same bucket of paint in the hands of Jackson Pollock, and they can turn it into millions. Right? The thing that this person did, by the way, and I look at this and I think, oh, I could do it. But you know what I couldn't do? Have the idea. Right? Can I fling paint around in my garage? Yeah, sure, I could copy it. He did it when no one else was. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it valuable, right? Everybody's looking this way and he's over here saying, I wonder what we could do. And so what I want you to hear more than anything is that as much as we, this like checking solutions, hey, you're right. Right. And by the way, that's the short answer on how I failed and had to withdraw dynamics. It's very easy to read solutions. They make sense. It's very hard to produce them. And that's the part I couldn't do. Listen, what I want you to be hearing from me right now is that there is a system that has taught us for a very long time to be quiet, to be afraid, to not ever want somebody to see us get it wrong, right? And instead, what I want you to realize is that you should make things and you should ship them. There should be a bias towards calling something done, even if it's not quote unquote good enough, and moving on. And I think part of this happens to do with something that I've really been pondering just the last couple of weeks. This is like my newest idea. I just wrote a blog post about it for the first time. I'm like still thinking about trying to understand this. I think that we should give up on goals. I think goals suck because when you set a goal, it's always made at a time where you have less information than the day that you would have had when you finished the goal. My goal is to do blank. Well, you don't know everything yet. And when you get to the point of actually trying to do blank, maybe you do, maybe you don't. And frequently what happens is we make these extreme commitments to something that we say we're going to accomplish, and we put blinders on to the fact that there's better things coming along, right? And so themes, oh, I love themes. I've gone as far now as being comfortable with identifying roles, right? I identify as a husband, a dad, a professor, a small business owner, and a rock climber. Those are me. Those are the things that matter to me that I want to see something happening in. But I used to set goals like this year I'm going to climb a route of this difficulty or harder. Right? This year I'm going to get an A in a class. You have no control over what grade I write down in your class, none whatsoever. What you have control over is the work that you submit. So maybe a theme or a mindset that says I'm going to work with excellence and I'm going to submit my work is worth doing. But making these blanket statements like I'm never going to turn a thing in late, I'm always going to start my homework one day, the day that it's assigned, right? I'm going to show up to 6 seminars this semester, even if my car breaks down on the way to the last one. When you put those things in your life, all you're really doing is giving yourself one more measurement to try and live up to, right? And so I've got this new kind of image that I've been thinking about as you watch super successful, right? The Elon Musks of the world. You know Elon Musk's wealth. Do you know where it came from? You know how he got rich? PayPal. He invented PayPal as a grad student. Learning computer programming, he invented PayPal. Right?
Wasn't called X at first.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just the urban myth, at least, right? And we'll go with it for the sake of this because I don't have more perfect data to give
It's
you.
true.
You know,
I read the book.
but the point is this, right? He did that, and now he's making spaceships and electric cars. And by the way, the solar panels that are on my house, I pay the bill to him. Right? These things are very different from each other: rocket ships and solar panels and electric cars, and yet there they are. And I think when you look at somebody like that, when you look at somebody like Bill Gates, when you look at the Steve Jobs of the world, who, by the way, got fired from his own company and then had to get hired back to it, they aren't finishers of goals. They're opportunity surfers. They see a cool thing and they double down and they work on it and they get it out the door, and another opportunity comes along. And sometimes they switch to that opportunity before they finish the first one. Right? In fact, when I really look back, all of the most amazing things that have ever happened in my life happened in the middle of working on something else instead of on the thing I thought I was going to do. I never wanted to get a PhD. And once I did, I wanted to do nothing but research. I never wanted to teach. And now all I do is teach, and I don't ever want to go back to the lab. Right? No shade on the lab. I'm done chasing wires and looking for that missing semicolon in my data reduction code. So the point here is, I like this new idea of surfing from opportunities, keeping your eyes open. In fact, I've coined a quote. I'm quoting myself. How arrogant. But I'm imperfect and I'm in the process of becoming my best self. So this is the way I'm going to communicate the message today. I'm starting to realize that success has more to do with looking around than looking forward. When all we do is focus our mind on the finish line, we miss the journey, which, by the way, your life is the journey. You know what happens the day after you graduate? Something. Something. Right? We put all this stock and off we go, right? And oh, that's a good one, right? And so there's just this interesting idea of like, should we even be doing that, or should we just be focusing on journeying well? I want day 13,335. I lost the number in my head already. I don't have that kind of brain. I want it to be better than day 13,334. I want the journey to be the thing. Right? Oh, yeah, Joshua. That's on my short list of hype songs. So that wraps up my core 3 values. I had just a couple ideas on what we could do with the time remaining. I know that I've gotten close to the end here. I don't know if they advertised these as an hour and a half, but they scheduled it for an hour and a half on WebEx. What were you expecting?
Until you got tired.
Till I got tired. Cool. Then here we go, because I am not tired. All right, rapid fire list of things to stop doing. Based on everything that I have just said, or not, based on everything that you've thought in the last few hours, what I would love to know is what's something that you should stop doing. Feel free to unmute and say it out loud. Feel free to text it to the group. Feel free to DM it to just me, and I'll read it for you without outing you. But ask yourself why you might consider doing it that way. A couple of things: giving up the idea of perfection, caring about how smart people think I am, holding back some smart-ass comments. I like that. That's fair.
What's
Amount
the
of time I
question?
spend formatting my homework. What are things that you should stop doing? Formatting homework. By the way, add to that list editing email.
Ugh.
When's the last time you edited an email? Every time you sent one? Like, my goodness, if it's that important, make a phone call instead and don't let that thing be in writing, you know?
5-sentence rule.
Waiting to ship until it's perfect, awesome, right? Trying to find the perfect homework problem so I think I can solve it easily. That's somebody in my class. I make them find their own homework, and it's very cruel. Stop focusing on knowing what to do and explore, right? How many times have you sat down to work on an assignment and not known where to start, and the result of that is that the page remains blank and you walk away instead of writing down something and trying something, right? I've got one on my own. I have a thing that I do called preambles, and I don't realize I do it until it's too late, but I'll explain something for a very long time before I get to what I'm talking about and then finally get there. So I've done it just now, by the way, as an example, right? That was a
Wow, I'm
preamble.
gonna rename it. I call it rambling, and I should
Nice.
call it preambles. That's way more
Preambles, right?
positive.
And what I'm actually doing, by the way, is I'm trying to defend the thing that I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Right? I'm trying to squash all of your attack on what I've just said before I've said it, right? Stop hesitating to ask questions. Hell yeah, Bianca, I like that one. Learning from mistakes, being concerned about being able to succeed that I don't try anything, right? Social media. Social media is rough, right? Because we curate. Social media is rough because we put the best of ourselves and then we look at it and we think that that's what our lives are supposed to be like. But that's because nobody realizes that the really awesome picture By the way, you can do this. My profile picture on Instagram, me smiling in front of a tree. Yeah, I was actually at my kid's first birthday party, and it's just a rare picture that I have of me smiling straight at the camera. That's why I picked it. What you don't see is that the lower half of my shirt is covered in chocolate icing from the fact that my kid at his first birthday party did what we hoped he would, and then did what we hoped he wouldn't. And so, right? Everything is edited, right?
I
I've
have a
got one.
question,
Yeah,
actually.
go for it.
So I have this horrible fear of failure, of failing something, of starting something and then failing. Like, what if I can't do it? What if I'm not good enough? Like, I have no freaking idea how to get over that, or how to,
Right,
you know,
right.
convince myself that, it doesn't matter. Like,
Do you mind sharing one of the worst failures you've experienced? Or even not, just a failure that you've experienced recently?
so, well, not recently, but this was, say, 6 years ago.
Okay, so something that
So,
was memorable. Okay.
yeah. So this was during my undergrad in, so I did my bachelor's in India. And in my third year, I failed 3 subjects.
Okay.
And these were required subjects. So I had basically 2 shots to do them right, because if I didn't do them right, then I have to take a year drop. So like I lose an entire year. So that was one time when I got like really jolted.
Okay.
Like I felt like this is it for me. Like how can I possibly fail? This is not who I am. This is not what I should be doing. And then I did like work really hard and sort of got through it, but I always felt like, what if this happens again? What if I don't get through the next time? This was one time that I never got through, and then I don't know. It's just kind of stayed with me in my head,
Right.
and
Right.
it's kind of makes me really afraid now. So
first off, thank you for not only sharing your feelings about it, but also the story itself. Payush, am I getting it right?
Piyush.
Piyush, thank you.
Yeah.
So you failed 3 classes?
Yeah, in one
And
semester.
it was pretty scary?
It was very scary. Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, I did pass them the second time.
And then what happened?
Well, then pretty much nothing.
Nothing. So you're still sitting in India having not finished your degree?
And no, I mean, I'm here with a master's degree now.
And you
So
have a master's degree.
yeah, and I have my comprehensive for the PhD on Friday.
Right. And that's a big one, and I totally feel you, by the way.
And this is my
Totally feel that.
second attempt, because out of 5, I managed to get 3 subjects and I failed in 2. So I still need to do 2 more.
Been there. I've been there.
And if I don't clear it this time, it's like I gotta go. So
okay, so there's pressure there, right? And it's
Oh,
real,
yeah.
and we have definitely built some of these kind of cruel benchmarks like that. There's a reason, by the way, that when you get your thesis or your dissertation done as a master's or a PhD student, that they call it a defense. They don't call it a final presentation, right? They come in there and kick you in the teeth for a little while, and it kind of sucks. And I'm sure Piyush can share on that. And I had my own version of it, and it was miserable. And then what?
Yeah,
It was
that
over, and I
horrible.
passed, and I moved on with my life. I'm not trying to make it sound small, because at the time that you're going through the hardest thing you've ever gone through, it's the hardest freaking thing you've ever gone through. And there's no comparing to anyone else. This is my struggle right now, the thing that I'm dealing with, and it's really hard, right? But what I've noticed is that our worst fear is usually far from what actually happens, even if the worst case actually does happen, right? Right. Failing a class is an interesting one. The class that I failed, put me on the 5-year plan. And then what? I borrowed a little extra money. And then what? I graduated. And then what? I married my wife, got a PhD, paid off my student loans in 2.5 years, and landed my dream job. Right. I have the benefit in this particular circumstance of looking at it from the other side, but I think that a lot of times one thing that may help, and this is the whole exercise here that I'm playing with you on, and I'm really grateful to you. The thing that actually happens is far less than our worst nightmare, right? Sometimes it isn't. And then what happens? well, we figure out how to dust ourselves off and move on anyway, right? You're talking to a guy who broke off an engagement. I had to explain to my grandpa why she wouldn't be around anymore, right? Terrible moment in my life, right? You're talking to a guy who couldn't get his wife pregnant. Spent 3 years trying to figure out why that was before we finally worked it out. Now I got 3 kids and it's a loud house, right? And then what? And then what? And then what? The point I'm trying to make here is just sometimes I think the best thing we can do when we're afraid of failing at something is playing out the absurdity of the absolute worst case, right? I fail 3 classes, I become a beggar, and I die on the street. Like, that's probably not what's going to happen. It'll probably be something less bad than that, right? Because you're already here, and if you care enough about having failed 3 classes, you're probably a motivated enough individual to at least find some way to provide for yourself. And so, like, the point here is just, be kind to yourself in recognizing that usually the fear either comes from us thinking that the worst case is really, really bad and it actually isn't, or the fear of the total unknown, right? I talk about rock climbing too much and I apologize for it in advance, but rock climbing for me is like a big metaphor for life. And the hardest part of climbing happens when you're working your way up a route and you've just put a piece of gear into a crack that will save your life if you fall. And then you have to climb past it, not quite sure where the next one's going to come. You just walk out into the unknown and keep moving forward. And the only way that I've been able to come away from what has been a crippling fear that has made me walk away from many, many, many rock climbs in my life or come down early is reminding myself that every time I've stepped out into that unknown so far, it's been okay and I've figured it out. And sometimes it's been a drama. Sometimes it's been like, holy shit, like, how far down is that last one? Like, that's not good. But other times it isn't, and usually it isn't, right? And so I think a big part of it is just recognizing that your amygdala, that part of your brain, that does lots of unlogical things, by the way. You ever see the thing about like you freeze in front of a car instead of jumping out of traffic? Cars bearing down on you, and all you can think to do is lock up and freeze. It's your amygdala, and it's giving you the same bad advice there than it is when it tells you to hide because you shouldn't stand out, right? When you allow that little thing in the bottom of your brain, it's the block, by the way, between all your higher level thinking and the actual communication channels down your spine into your body, right? That's what your amygdala does. It takes over, right? You move your hand off a hot stove before you realize that you burned yourself because the amygdala. And sometimes that's a good thing. Like, I appreciate that I haven't actually cooked my hand on the stove before. But you have to be careful because when it doesn't know what's going to happen, it lets you play out the worst scenario. And so far, my experience has been that it's not that bad. Just send it. All right. That was really cool. I'm so grateful that you shared that. Fabi, I know you had something you wanted to add to that.
You already know this story, Dr. Farrar, but I wanted to share it with everybody because um, it has a lot to do with imposter syndrome. So I'm actually 27 years old, and I came to UNLV when I was 19, trying to pursue a degree for electrical engineering. And my first semester was terrible. I had imposter syndrome. I didn't know that was a thing at the time. I didn't know my resources, and I failed the whole semester due to personal reasons, financial reasons. And then I tried to go to school again, failed, or not, didn't fail. I had to drop out early because I had to get a job. And so then this caused for me to lose my financial aid. And I thought, maybe college is just not for me. I went into the service industry. I worked for a few years, and there was just this nudge, like something that kept telling me, like, you've always wanted to be an engineer. The worst thing already happened, and so I decided to give it a shot again. So I saved up money and I came back to school 2.5 years ago. Since then, I've been in the dean list every single semester. I've paid for school on my own. Actually, my first semester back is when I found out about imposter syndrome, and that's when I was like, "Oh wow, it's me. I'm the one holding myself back. I already went through the worst thing that could ever happen I actually became homeless around that same time. So a lot of bad things happened to me. And now that I'm accomplishing things, like I'm starting to receive internship opportunities, I'm starting to work on lab projects. Now I think back to that time where I thought that the worst case scenario, that I was ruined. Now I think back to it, I'm like, wow, that actually is what made me stronger. And I came back. Now I'm doing civil engineering. I'm loving it. It's amazing. But I wouldn't be here without me having to go through that. And so I feel like the worst case scenario for me at this point is if I die. Anything else I can accomplish. The fact that we're all alive here, being able to have this conversation, it's a miracle. And so I just wanted to say, if anybody else feels the way that I do, I mean, even now, I still feel like sometimes like I don't deserve to be here, but I know it's just my brain. It's just what society has told me, and we're all meant to do great things. And so I just want to share that with you guys because Dr. Farrar shared his story, and Piyush, you also shared yours, and it seems to me like you conquered your fear, and that's amazing. So, yeah.
Wow. Hey, thank you so much as well. I really appreciate you. It's just, it's amazing to me that we have this community available to us. Like, you're surrounded by people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. By the way, that's the only thing I think that we really add value in the universities anymore, right? There's nothing that I'm going to teach my students that they can't learn for free on YouTube. And the reason I know that is because everything I teach my students, I put on YouTube. Like, you can go there for free right now and watch any lecture in any class that I've ever given. It's there, right? And I think that it's just really like crucial to remember that what you're really paying for access to right now is each other, right? And hopefully me too, and folks like me. And my goodness, it's just a few more months, y'all, and we're gonna be able to have this conversation in the Great Hall or out on the quad. And I can't wait to like have a cup of coffee with you. Like, holy shit, this is cool. Christian, hit me up.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in a similar situation with Fabi where I was in the service industry, came back to school a couple years later, but it actually kind of ties back to your goals thing. I set a stupid goal for myself. I said I want to get my degree before my 10-year reunion at high school. And it's pretty much just saying like, here's a stupid goal. I won't be too disappointed if I don't hit it, but it still kind of pushes me to where I want to go. So yeah, I was just thinking about that when you were talking about your, maybe getting rid of the goals altogether.
It's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So question for you on that. Like, are you going to hit that one?
I hope so. I
Okay, so
really
you want
have to
right.
strain myself for it, but yeah.
So I think that maybe the corollary that I'll throw on my little theory about goals right now is that I have always been working hard on something, right? And I don't think that the better thing would have come along if I hadn't been. That makes sense? Like, if I hadn't been working hard on becoming what's the word I'm looking for? An automotive engineer, the chance to do jet engines wouldn't have happened actually, and I would have never found my love for jet engines, right? If I hadn't found my love for jet engines and started doubling down and working hard and promising that I was going to disappear into the research industry around jet engines for the rest of my life, I never would have woken up and needed to take one semester off and do TA work because I couldn't find research funding. And if that hadn't happened, I would have never discovered the way that I love teaching, right? And so I think maybe a better way to say what I'm trying to say there could be have a goal, work hard for it, but hold it loosely. Because let me tell you, Christian, if an opportunity comes along for you to spend a year studying abroad in Europe, and it means it's going to add a year to your college education, but you're going to spend that year learning about whatever type of thing it is you do from some experts over there, and you're going to have all this crazy fun, might be worth it, as opposed to saying, no, I got to get done before my 10-year anniversary from graduating high school comes up. I can't predict, right? But the point is just like, we should be looking around. And so maybe it's pursue a goal, but then hold it loosely enough that when something better comes along, you're willing to recognize it. By the way, there is a pretty cool book about this called The Dip. It's by Seth Godin. It's all of like 90 pages long. You can read it in 12 minutes. And it's literally a book about whether or not you should give up on something or not, which is pretty awesome. All right, I see a hand raise. Hang on, that is Raquel. Awesome. What's up?
Yes. Hello. I was like, first of all, I want to say thank you for everyone for being here. I feel like the number one thing is to have conversations like these because kind of similar to Fabiani and Christian, except it's the reverse. I started off as a STEM student and then instantly realized it wasn't something that I wanted to pursue. It was like my external factors that were influencing that. So then I ended up switching to hospitality, which I know gets a lot of heat for being like easy, but for me, I know it's something that made sense rather than me trying to focus on something else.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's incredible. I love that. Thank you for sharing it as well. Because I think that of the many things that we do wrong, we have this stigma. They don't call it changing majors; they call it dropping out of engineering. And excuse my language again, because I know we're being recorded, but that's bullshit. Like, are you serious? How about the reason you come to a school that has 347 different majors is because maybe when you first started, you didn't have good enough information. And maybe you should shop around a little bit and enjoy the fact that you have that opportunity here and you can walk up to people. And I'm sorry, but anybody who's ever worked in the service industry, I know at least two people that can agree with me right now. Everybody should have to wait tables for one semester so that they know how to be a good customer in a restaurant. Like, oh my goodness. The service industry might not be hard calculus, but it ain't easy. Pleasing other people, right? Because you're always basing it on imperfect information, right? I got rear-ended on my way into your hotel and I'm already ticked off. And you're still the one that has to pick that up, right? My goodness. Wow. Okay, I have
I
like 3 more
actually,
slides. This is better though. I think I should not talk. Well, somebody said something.
I was
Sorry.
just gonna say, I actually last year I work at Marquee at the Cosmo on the weekends. That's how I pay for school. But I was trying to help a customer that was really drunk due to my fault, and I was trying to give him some water, and he thought it would be funny to grab the water and spit it in my face and I was just like, what? Like, I was just trying to help you, you know? And also, people don't know how to say please. So if you ask for somebody to give you a drink, please
Unbelievable.
say please. I don't
Unbelievable.
take the order unless you ask me please, because I am a human being. So just saying, next time you ask
Darn
an
right.
order, say please.
Yeah, on that note, actually, and related to studying abroad, I studied abroad in 2018 in Valencia, Spain.
Awesome.
And at one point, I was in Barcelona with some of my other people. We were like traveling around, visiting the city. And at the hotel we were staying at, I asked the front desk person very politely, could you please change this euro for coins, right? And he just told me, wow, nobody ever says pleased. I'm so shocked. So yeah, it's really important to do that.
Yeah, and I think there's so many things in our world that kind of wall us in, right? We drive in our cars and the people in their cars are obstacles, not people who have as equally complex a story as you that are trying to accomplish an equally complex task, whatever it is, right? Get the heck
Call
out of
that.
that crosswalk. Or if you let somebody in and they don't wave and then you just want to like murder them. Like it's so rough. Okay, I just want to kind of keep driving things in the direction here because I should be kind to our time and probably end this in the next 10 minutes as much as I don't want to because I just love being around you. It's amazing. If we had a rapid fire list of things that we should start doing, what would that look like? Came up with start trying new things, right? I've got one that would be weird. Turn something in that isn't finished. Be unapologetically you. Oh, I like that one. Ask for help when you need it. Right? Amazing 2 months till I say, oh. Better than not turning it in
But
at all. You're
not
darn right.
worry about the result and just do things.
Yeah, there you go. Don't worry about the results so much, right? You have no control over the outcome, only the input. Right? You can't control how I respond to your thing. You can just control what you do. Yeah. Pick up a new hobby unrelated to your major career. Love that one. By the way, while all of my colleagues are nerding out over books that have the word pedagogy in them, I read books about marketing, and that's how I learned how to teach. This is my theory, right? I'm gonna do a little experiment right now to prove my point. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. It's as good at singing as they're going to get from me.
Damn.
Somebody,
I'm
Really?
loving it.
how
Oh,
much time have you
so
spent
close.
studying the McDonald's menu? Can you list 4 things on it? Marketing works. If I can use their tactics in my classroom, maybe you can figure out Newton's second law. I don't know. Dang, now we're all hungry, right? Yeah, it's past dinner time for moi. All right, so I had a couple of things on my list, but you can completely talk over me, and I hope you will, okay? One that I think is crucial, and this is just like a high-level version of it. That was a preamble, by the way. I apologize. Oh, and it was an apology, which is another one that I'm removing from my list of things to do regularly. Stop apologizing. You own the space that you're in. Don't apologize for it. I see people all the time that walk into a room and the first words out of their mouth are, "I'm sorry." For what? Okay. Bias towards action. Do something instead of nothing. Write something down. Make something. See what happens. Highlight a sentence in the book. Do something, right? I think that's a big one. For me, like this presentation, like every lecture I ever give, and like every assignment I've ever created, everything is a draft. You're not turning in your final anything. Stop using the word final in your file names.
Oh.
It's just draft 7 or 17 or 46 if it's like my dissertation. The point is just turn it in and realize that you can always make it better. But just because you can make it better doesn't mean it deserves it. If I'd have given this talk 3 more days of my time, I'm not sure it would have gone any better than it's going. Right? There's a diminishing returns here. In fact, I think the most valuable thing that happened was I got a little uncomfortable for myself, and then you all of a sudden started talking. Everything really good came out of your mouth today. I don't know if you realize that. Which brings me to another one that I think is crucial. Representation matters, right? I have my own mission in this way, but so do you. And I'm not trying to elect everybody to be their representative of their personal brand of diversity or anything like that. But what I am trying to say is that I'm done with the culture of othering. I'm done with the culture of assuming that we know what other people's experiences are like. And I hope that you are too. Okay. I hope that you can find value in listening to other people's stories. Okay. And finding new ideas there, because that's where the good ones are hiding, in the story that you hadn't heard before. Right? Somebody says, what's my opinion of letting go of expectation completely? Not just letting go of your goal, but the expectation of any progress. That's really cool. I think that's like a level of Zen I haven't hit yet, right? Or enlightenment, or whatever the terms that are used, right? I think that for me, it's about I want to feel like I'm more me today than I was yesterday. Since I'm not quite sure who that is, I expect to see some sort of change. Right? Maybe I figured out how to do something I don't know how to do yet, and that's a version of quote unquote progress. Right? I think that, if you started handing me homework assignments and the second you put it in my hand, I tore it up and threw it away without telling you anything about it, you'd be pretty demotivated. Like, I think we do want something that makes us feel like we got somewhere, right? But yeah, that short answer on that, maybe. Well, now it's a long one after my preamble. I'm going to ponder that one. Probably have to read my blog. Which brings me to my next point. I think everybody should blog, especially folks in STEM. We are convinced that we are left brainers, right brainers, whichever one does the math. And the truth is, we are whole humans, and nothing has been more valuable to me in my life than telling the story of my journey. When you read my blog, it looks like I'm giving you information. What I'm actually doing is telling you the latest thing that I figured out for myself. And when you do that, a couple interesting things happen. Okay, this is a career services seminar, so I should tell you something about your career. Every job interview I've ever had has asked me about my blog, and I have never once shared the link in my application. Like specific questions about specific posts. Hey, I saw you were writing about such and such the other day. Which means 2 things. Number 1, they Googled me, and number 2, they read it and remembered something I had to say. I've got this theory that the quickest way to get words like this associated with your name is to write about them. Right? If you go to my blog right now and you don't even open a single post, you just scroll down the page and look at the titles of my posts, you'll see words like these, And subconsciously, you start thinking about me, tonyferrar.com, myname.com, tonyferrar.com/blog if you really don't want to click the blog button at the top of the page, tonyferrar.com. But I think that a lot of us are afraid of standing out because we're told to be afraid to stand out, right? Oh, by the way, when it comes to all that stuff, I also don't believe in sanitizing my social media. If you scroll far enough down in my public feeds, you can find pictures of me wearing coconut bras and hula skirts. And I'm quite proud of the fact that if you're going to get there and find that challenge extended, it's still there. Good luck. You'll have to scroll through so many pages of things that I am proud for you to see, that when you do get there, instead of thinking, wow, this guy's a real jerk, all you're going to be thinking is, huh, he grew up. And so I'd like to encourage you to blog, and when you do it, don't wait until you have a good idea. On Tuesdays at 7 a.m., I press the publish button. That should be your mindset. That's not what I've been doing lately, but it's because I've been focused on other things. But the reason for that is to practice shipping when you're not quite ready. Say something. You could always make it better. That's what next week's post is about. Because the other thing that I know is true is nobody reads all of them. You're not going to go back down my thing. I try to do once a week. I've tried to do it once a day. I've done a million different versions of this. Pick the schedule that works for you. But I think it's more valuable mentally and spiritually or emotionally, whatever your thing is, to pick a recurring period of time and something gets published at that moment. I don't schedule the post, but at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays, I press the publish button of whatever I've written, and it's good enough. Okay? Which brings me to the way that I started. You may recall that I told you it was important to me that I introduced myself a certain way. That wasn't for you, it was for me. I always introduce myself using this outline. I am from, my specialty is. And what's happened there is a couple of things. Let me unpack. Ooh, I like that one. Thanks there, Santiago. In most cultures, including the US English, I should say that US English is what I meant when I said, and now it's a language, not a culture. What the frick? One of these days I'm going to figure out how to talk about these things. We say things like, my name is. Je m'appelle. I'm called. Me llamo. They call me. I think that's how it translates. I don't know. You could tell me better. The point is, what's a Tony Farrar? Well, it's the external thing. It's the label that people have applied to me. My identity comes from outside. When I use the words I am, nobody but me notices it. But what's happening in behind the scenes is I'm thinking, I'm Tony Farrar. I'll tell you what the frick a Tony Farrar is. Let me show you. It's hype step number one. Anytime I walk into a room where I'm scared, I say, I am Tony Farrar. Let me show you what that means, right? Second thing is from. This is to give you some context, but it's also easy for you to follow up. When I say I'm from UNLV, obviously that'd be stupid here because you know I'm from UNLV. But if you didn't, it's an easy follow-up question. Oh yeah? What college? What department? I've just reduced the friction to having a conversation, right? You want to make it easy to talk to you. Give people information that's a little bit higher level than the, oh, I'm Tony Farrar from the so-and-so lab in the such and such department at such and such university of extreme prestige and labels and facts and figures. You know, instead, no, give them something high enough level that they have to ask a follow-up question. And my specialty is, this gives me two opportunities. One, a way for you to follow up again, because most engineering professors don't claim student success as their specialty. And two, a reminder that, you know what, damn it, I am kind of cool. I'm going to own that. And something that I'm good at is helping students succeed in their lives. And I'm going to bring that to this conversation, or we're not going to have it, right? And so it turns out this little formula for me is like something that has completely changed my life. And that brings me to the last thing I want to show you other than my contact information, so you can follow up with me because we are getting close to our time here. And that's Mitch Hedberg. If you don't know who Mitch Hedberg was, he's freaking hilarious. He's one of the best observational comedians on the planet. He would just say things that we look at every day without realizing they're funny. And this is one of them. I hate turkeys. If you go to the grocery store, you start to get mad at turkeys because you see turkey ham and turkey bologna and turkey pastrami. Somebody needs to tell these turkeys, just be yourselves. I already like you, little fella. Be yourself. So with that, I would like to tell you one last thing. There is hundreds of millions of dollars surrounding entire industries whose job it is to tell you that you're not good enough. But if you buy our thing, you will be. Right? You're not good enough. Buy a Peloton. You're not good enough. Buy Lululemon. You're not good enough. buy our self-help cook, watch our movie, go to our seminar. This one was included, so no extra charge, right? How about instead you realize that you have intrinsic value? The truth is you're freaking awesome. So just go do some cool stuff, right? One last quote from Seth Godin, and then I promise to stop talking. For hundreds of years, the population has been seduced, scammed, and brainwashed into fitting in, following instruction, exchanging a day's work for a day's pay. That era has come to an end just in time. You have brilliance in you. Your contribution is valuable, and the art that you're going to create is precious. Only you can do it, and you must. I'm hoping you'll stand up and choose to make a difference. So thank you so much for being here. I feel like I probably got more out of this than all of you combined, and I'm so grateful for this time that we've had together. I can't wait to see you in person in the fall when we're on campus. This is how you can contact me, and I hope you will. I've recently transitioned from doing a Snap story every day to doing an Instagram story every day. I'm sorry, Snapchat folks. I have my reasons. But I hope that you'll bother me because it won't be bothering me. I want to hear from you. Send me a Discord request. Be my buddy. I'll invite you to my little server, which is more than just the classes that I teach. I still use Snap. If you hit me up on there, I will see the notification and I will respond to you. Life, homework, whatever the thing, hit me up, okay? Snap a picture of your statics homework when you can't figure it out and say, I'm stuck, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, you missed a minus sign on line 3, and we'll move on with our lives. And when you want me to edit your resume, I'll do that too. I love this stuff, okay, y'all? So screenshot this before it's gone. I will PDF it and find a way to get it distributed to you. In the meanwhile, the one last thing I want to say is if you're interested in engineering entrepreneurship, this does not have to be an engineering student. If you're just curious what it might be like to try and create and ship something, I'm trying to start a group. So hit me up. This is how you can reach me in a nutshell. It's not a thing yet, but it's gonna be, and I think it's gonna be pretty cool. I love you all so, so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. I'll hang out. I'll probably be the last one to leave. But in the meanwhile, I'm done. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Farrar.
Thanks yourself. Whew.